Imagine that you are walking peacefully down a busy street when suddenly someone bumps into you forcefully. The hot coffee in your hand spills, staining your clothes. What do you do? Most people would react immediately, perhaps with anger, frustration, or even retaliating with a disapproving look. But what if there were a way to not let external situations control your emotions? The answer to this was taught more than 2,500 years ago by Gautama Buddha. True power is not in strength, but in the ability to choose your response. Those who master their reactions are not manipulated by external chaos, but become masters of their own destiny. We live in a world where we are constantly being tested. A rude comment, a negative news story, an unexpected mistake. But the real difference between someone who suffers from it and someone who maintains their inner peace lies in how they react. In this video, you will discover one of the most powerful teachings of Buddhism, the power of not reacting impulsively. Let's explore an ancient story and a modern experience to understand how this practice can transform your life. Get ready to learn something that can completely change the way you handle your emotions. The King and the Fly. The art of mastering emotions. Many centuries ago, in a prosperous and grand kingdom, a king ruled with wisdom and wealth. However, he had a problem that no one dared to question. He was extremely impulsive. Any small setback would make him furious, and when something didn't go as planned, everyone around him suffered the consequences. One day, he received an invitation to visit a neighboring king, famous for his patience and intelligence. Curious to understand the reason for his fame, the monarch accepted the invitation and traveled to meet him. When he arrived, he was greeted with a majestic reception. The banquet was lavish, the musicians played soft melodies, and everything seemed perfect. Until something unexpected happened. While he was having his soup, a small insect landed in his bowl. Indignant, the king immediately ordered the servants to replace the meal. Observing the scene, the host king smiled and calmly said, "Majesty, it was not the fly that ruined your experience, but your own reaction to it." These words echoed in the visitor's mind. At that moment, he realized that his irritation had not been caused by the insect, but by his inability to maintain self-control. Upon returning to his kingdom, he decided to try a new approach, practicing the art of not reacting impulsively. Whenever something unpleasant happened, he would pause, take a deep breath, and choose his response consciously. At first, it was difficult, but over time he realized that his life was lighter, his decisions wiser, and his reign more harmonious. This story teaches us something fundamental. Most situations that drive us crazy have no power over us unless we let them. The true control is not in avoiding problems, but in choosing how we respond to them. And if even a king was able to change his way of dealing with adversities, why couldn't we do the same? Now, let's explore how this teaching applies to modern life and how we can develop this skill in our daily lives. Michael and the Path of Self-Awareness, the journey to emotional control. In the modern world, we are constantly tested. An impolite email, a negative comment, an unexpected delay, each of these moments can be a trigger for anger, frustration, or anxiety. But what differentiates those who react impulsively from those who remain serene? Michael was the kind of person who would explode easily. At work, small criticisms deeply irritated him. In traffic, any honk seemed like a personal attack. At home, he argued over trivial things. He believed that his problems came from the world around him, but he never realized that the true problem was within him. One day, after an intense argument with a colleague, he realized the impact that his lack of emotional control was having on his life. His relationships were strained, his mind was constantly agitated, and even his body suffered from pain and stress. It was then that he decided to change. Inspired by teachings on mindfulness and emotional intelligence, he began practicing a new method. Observe his reactions. Before responding impulsively, he began to notice how his body reacted. Did his heart race? Did your face get hot? Did your hands clench? Create a space between the stimulus and the response. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, he would count to 3, take a deep breath, and reframe his response. Reevaluate the situation. He began to ask himself, does this really deserve so much energy? Most of the time, he realized that his anger was unnecessary. In the beginning, it was a challenge. His mind was still conditioned to respond automatically to the slightest annoyance. But over time, something incredible happened. He began to feel more at peace, his relationships improved, and his productivity increased. Now, when a challenging situation arose, he knew he had the power to choose his response instead of becoming a hostage to his emotions. This story shows us an essential truth. We cannot control everything around us, but we can control how we react. Inner peace does not come from the absence of problems, but from the ability to face them with balance and awareness. The dangers of reacting without thinking, how impulsive emotions can sabotage your life. How many times have you said or done something in the heat of the moment and then regretted it? The impulsive reaction may seem inevitable, but in reality, it is a reflection of a lack of emotional control. Impulsiveness can be an invisible enemy. In an instant, a misplaced word can destroy a relationship. A hasty decision can cost valuable opportunities. When we let our emotions take control, we put our peace, our reputation, and our choices at risk. Reacting without thinking often puts us in 3 emotional traps. The cycle of anger. An aggressive response usually generates another negative reaction, creating a domino effect of conflicts and resentments. Hasty decisions. When we act without reflection, we tend to choose what gives us immediate relief instead of what is truly better in the long run. Loss of self-control. Every time we give in to a negative emotion without a filter, we reinforce that mental pattern, making it even harder to break in the future. People who do not control their reactions often justify their behaviors by saying they couldn't hold back, but that is not true. Self-control is a skill that can be trained. The key to avoiding these traps is not in repressing emotions, but in understanding and channeling them correctly. Instead of reacting automatically, we can pause, breathe, and assess the situation before responding. This not only gives us more clarity, but also protects us from bad decisions and future regrets. Training the mind, how to develop self-control and master your reactions. If controlling emotions were easy, everyone would do it naturally. But self-control is not something that simply comes naturally. It needs to be cultivated. Just like a muscle, the mind can be trained to react more balanced in the face of challenges. The first step towards this change is to increase awareness of your own emotions. Instead of just feeling anger, frustration, or anxiety, observe what triggers these emotions. When you notice that something is affecting you, take a pause. This small interval between the stimulus and the response can be the difference between an impulsive mistake and a wise decision. Here are some techniques to develop emotional self-control. Conscious breathing. Before reacting, take 3 deep breaths. This simple act slows down the nervous system and brings more clarity. Change your focus quickly. If you realize you are about to act impulsively, direct your attention to something else for a few moments. It could be looking at a fixed object, leaving the environment, or even drinking a glass of water. Reflect before speaking or acting. Ask yourself, will this improve the situation or make it worse? If the answer is negative, hold on and reframe your thinking. Practice strategic silence. Not every provocation deserves a response. Sometimes, the best attitude is simply not to react and let the situation lose its strength on its own. Train your patience daily. Small daily challenges, such as waiting in line without complaining or dealing with delays without getting irritated, are great opportunities to strengthen your emotional control. In the long run, these practices shape a new mental pattern. You will stop being a hostage to circumstances and become the master of your own reactions. The secret is not in eliminating emotions, but in learning to use them to your advantage. The impact of self-control on interpersonal relationships. Have you noticed how some people manage to stay calm even in the face of criticism, arguments, or tense moments? These people not only avoid unnecessary conflicts, but also build healthier and more harmonious relationships. When we react impulsively, our words can hurt and create emotional barriers. Often we say something in the heat of the moment and then regret it, but the damage has already been done. Relationships, whether they are familial, professional, or romantic, are deeply impacted by the way we handle our emotions. Here are some ways in which self-control can strengthen the bonds with the people around us. Improvement in communication. When we listen before responding, our message becomes clearer and avoids misunderstandings. Reduction of conflicts. By not immediately reacting to provocations or criticisms, we avoid unnecessary discussions and maintain a more peaceful environment. Increase in empathy. By controlling our emotions, we can better understand the other person's point of view without being overwhelmed by our own frustration. Strengthening bonds. Emotionally balanced people are more reliable and respected, which creates stronger connections. Greater influence over others. Those who know how to control themselves have a greater impact on others as they convey confidence and maturity. Developing self-control does not mean repressing feelings, but learning to channel them constructively. Instead of turning small misunderstandings into big problems, we learn to respond with awareness and emotional intelligence. The relationship between self-control and physical and mental health. What happens in our body when we react impulsively? Each outburst of anger, each moment of intense stress, and each uncontrolled reaction leave marks not only on the mind, but also on the body. When we get irritated or feel anxious, the brain releases cortisol and adrenaline, hormones linked to stress. If this state becomes frequent, it can lead to serious problems such as high blood pressure, insomnia, low immunity, and even heart diseases. The body enters a constant cycle of tension, which consumes vital energy and makes us more vulnerable to illnesses. But when we learn to control our reactions, the effect on the body is exactly the opposite. Stress reduction. The brain stops, releasing harmful hormones, and the feeling of well-being increases. Improvement in sleep. More serene people sleep better because they don't carry emotional tension into their resting time, strengthening the immune system. Less stress means a body more prepared to fight diseases. Blood pressure balance. Calmness reduces pressure spikes and keeps the heart healthy. More energy in daily life. Less emotional wear means more readiness for important activities. Buddhism teaches that the mind and body are inseparable. When the mind is agitated, the body reflects that imbalance. But when we find inner serenity, it manifests in our health and quality of life. Learning not to react impulsively is not just a matter of personal development, but a necessity for those who wish to live with more lightness, health, and longevity. The true power lies in how you choose to react. We have reached the end of this journey, but the true transformation begins now. Each situation that arises in your life is a new opportunity to practice self-control. You can continue to be a hostage to your emotions, or you can take command and consciously decide how you want to respond to the world around you. Buddhism teaches that it is not what happens to us that defines our experience, but rather how we deal with it. Small, everyday events test our balance, and the way we react shapes our inner peace. Every day, unexpected challenges, difficult people, and frustrating moments will arise. But now, you have the necessary knowledge to avoid falling into the trap of impulsivity. You can take a deep breath, pause, and choose a wise response. So the question that remains is, starting today, will you continue to let circumstances control your life, or will you decide to take charge of your own reactions? The answer is in your hands.